like when I started it, I kind of expected it would be just this kind of tiny side project, and we'd get it done in a couple of months, and then I'd go back to university. So no, I mean, I was definitely did not expect this for Ethereum. I mean, did not expect this level of just size and attention for the crypto space in general.
No, I mean, the thing that you really did with smart contracts was unlocking the value layer. What it created was everything that we've seen over the last year, this explosion of DeFi, NFTs, and now everybody's moving towards Web 3.0 and then has staking now, and that's creating a whole new ecosystem. How are you seeing the DeFi ecosystem develop?
Again, I think, first of all, the DeFi ecosystem is definitely maturing. Just the fact that these projects are continuing to survive, and obviously there's a lot of the kind of ones around the edges that that get hacked from time to time. But if you just focus on the core ones, the ones that have existed for a few years, the Maker, Uniswap, all of the ones that just people have been working on since the beginning, they're just continuing to be stable, continuing to do what people want them to do, continuing to just, grow and just provide the, whatever the functionality that people have been expecting of them. And I think trust in those platforms is just continuing to increase. So I think the trends that we're going to start seeing over the next few years is basically just more ongoing adoption, more kinds of people using DeFi. The NFT space that we just had a panel about right before this, right? That's I think that's an interesting example of something that I've been talking about, with regard to the crypto space for a long time, which is that, I don't think the future is financial or non-financial. I think it's kind of mixed financial. I think it's projects that are not just about money in nature, but that still benefit a lot from being directly plugged into this kind of massive value layer that we've created, with the kind of Ethereum and the greater crypto ecosystem. If you have an NFT, buying and selling it requires an auction. That's smart contracts. If you buy it, you might be buying it with a coin. Often a coin is DAI, and DAI is itself created by a DeFi platform. So there's just DeFi components that are being plugged in all over the place, right?
A lot of people mistakenly think of DeFi, as you say, as just this part of a financial system that's disintermediating the banks. But actually what's going on is it feels like there's an entirely new parallel financial system and economic system that's being built. It's a whole ecosystem. It's not just about finance. That value layer of the NFT space has been fascinating because it's kind of exploded, and it's very nascent right now because we've got some of the leading projects with CryptoPunks and Bored Ape Yacht Club. People are kind of coalescing around these communities, but it feels like it's still very early with where NFTs are going.
The word just literally stands for non-fungible token. And so it literally just is the entire subset of tokens, where instead of a token that has many units that all represent the same thing, it's a token where each individual unit represents a different thing. That's big, right? Pieces of art are NFTs, ENS domain names are NFTs. Items in video games are NFTs, things in Loot Project are NFTs, right? So we're going to see many different kinds of NFTs. Some NFTs are going to represent things that are purely crypto native, so whose value basically only comes from people within the crypto space being willing to pay attention to them. And there's also going to be NFTs that represent assets that have some kind of legal power in the physical world. Intellectual property rights are one example. Real estate is another example. Just like we have stable coins, right? We have the algorithmic stable coins that are kind of purely crypto based. And then we also have USDC, institutionally backed crypto stablecoins that are pointers to dollars that are being held in bank accounts. So, same with NFTs. We have NFTs that'll have their value entirely derived from things happening in crypto land, and we'll have NFTs that have value that come from kind of connections to existing legal property rights that we already have, but that maybe are currently not that efficient to kind of actually use in interesting ways and do things with.
Allows there to be lending markets that build around these NFTs as well. So that's where kind of, we're starting to see lending markets developing around some of the artwork and other bits and pieces.
Yep.
And you can just see that all of these bits of the jigsaw are starting to build on top of each other at a ridiculous rate.
Exactly. I think there's a lot of different combinations that are really fun. Like, just to give a couple of examples, like one is the concept of fractional ownership. Like, you could see that being applied to NFTs. You could see that even be applied to NFTs representing real estate. You could see NFTs being linked together with DAOs. So, like, think of something like a condominium association, right? Like, if NFTs become real estate ownership, then a condominium association can just be a DAO. And, you know, instead of it being governed through like these boring, like often pen and paper based 20th century processes, you can just, like, you know, have all the votes just like happen through some contract on chain, right? So there's a lot of different ways to kind of connect each and every one of these components. And like, most of the interesting applications, I think, end up connecting different pieces together already.
A lot of real estate that performs well is expensive, and most people can't participate. The moment you tokenize it, anybody can participate. Anybody can put 5% of their savings in a $100 million property. And that's it's an extraordinary change. And liquidity of real estate markets is going to change forever once this starts happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, like, I mean, in real estate specifically, right? Like, the non-fungibility of it is, like, in many ways you can see it as like as a source of just a huge number of problems, right? Because, like, you know, if you live in a city today, you're either a homeowner, in which case you're just massively overexposed to one asset, or you're a renter, in which case you're negatively exposed to that asset, and you're even, like, you could say negatively exposed to, like, basically your community being a good place to live, right? So, like, giving people access to options that are kind of in between those two extremes on that spectrum, like partial ownership, some kind of system where ownership builds up over time, using crypto like loans to be able to actually actually facilitate that. I think you know, there's lots of opportunities for really cool things to happen there.
What is your definition of Web 3.0, your working definition? Because it will change over time, as everybody's does. And how far are we in this process?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, Web 3.0 is obviously a very big term. I think there's a lot of different things that different people are excited about. Like, there's people who are excited about, like, say, creating more decentralized forms of, like, say, social media that might have more open and transparent governance, creating ways, like, some kind of better integration between internet applications and the finance layer, or just like adding on the capability to have assets in general, and to have, like, this notion of permanent ownership, kind of that's not dependent on some single institution facilitating it, being like a much more base part of the internet. There's obviously just kind of the DeFi vision itself, different ways for people to monetize. Like, there's all these different things that people want to do. And I mean, Web3 is definitely a very big umbrella term that covers all of these things, which I think is okay, right? I mean, I think, you know, there is a big revolution happening here, right? There's there are these technologies. I mean, I think, like, not just blockchains, zero knowledge proofs are also a really big and important one.
One of the key things missing from all of this still, I think, is the wallet experience, the kind of ubiquitous wallet experience. And the other thing is that zero knowledge proof identity layer that I think we need for the internet. That many of us share this idea that we shouldn't give all of our information to everybody. And I think many people's vision of Web 3.0 is that we hold our own data, and if we want to sell our data, we can. How far is this along from before we get to that usability where we get the digital identity and wallets that are not so difficult to set up?
Sure. I mean, I think in practice, the biggest usability challenge at this point is just the transaction fees, right? And, like, layer 2 protocols are the solution to that, right? Like, you know, in Ethereum lands, you know, we have Optimism, Arbitrum, Polygon, increasingly the zero knowledge family. So I think it's like all of these, you know, it's great that all these things are happening, but So like, and I think once that happens, then like the biggest practical usability problem that's in front of users today, like basically disappears. There are other usability problems too. Like I think the other really big one is the fact that most people are not really set up well to fully manage their existing cryptocurrency wallets and make sure they don't lose all of these digital assets. That's not really a model that people are necessarily used to in a world where most valuable things are things where if people go wrong, you can go and talk to the bank, or you can go and talk to the court or the police or whoever else, and they'll figure things out. But there are solutions in the crypto space that are they're trying to solve the problem and reduce the chance that funds get lost, reduce the chance that funds get stolen, just make people feel safer when handling these assets. Things like social recovery wallets, multi-sig wallets, different kind of hybrid institutional forms of custody where some institution can help serve as a backup without that institution actually having the ability to or without that institution having the ability to control that asset completely. So there's a lot of important work being done in those areas as well. But I think all of these problems are going to just slowly start to get solved over the next couple of years, and so I'm really excited about that.
This is the fastest adoption of any technology in all human history. It's growing at twice the speed that the internet adoption did back in when it had the same number of users. There's so much going on, as we've just talked about. I mean, the whole space has exploded in depth, not only in the number of different protocols, but the use cases of everything as well. So how should a country like Singapore, or any country, think through a revolution that's happening this fast? Because it's a bit unsettling for countries, let alone companies. How should they think it through?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of different angles to think it through from. I mean, one angle is just how to be supportive of good projects that are trying to make all of this happen locally, right? And I think Singapore is in a potentially good position to do a lot of that. It's already a financial hub. It's already a legal registration hub. So if people end up wanting to do projects that involve either say NFTs that are backed by some kind of legal property rights, then basing them in Singapore might be a great choice for people to do. And if people start doing that, then there's the question for the Singapore government of what can they do to make it easier for people to do those kinds of things. Second project way to look at it is of course looking at it from the kind of user side, and looking at it from the point of view of what are specific applications that could be valuable and could make a lot of sense. Might there be use cases for say NFTs or some DAOs or something for fractionalized real estate ownership inside of Singapore? Might there be use cases use cases for people say local artists that might want to use NFTs as a way of getting revenue, possibly DAOs that might be funding art or cultural works of different kinds. So just to look at it kind of application by application and see what's worth doing. I think those are probably the two kind of biggest things to focus on, and basically just try to see what are the interesting things that can be done, what are the best ways to maximize the upsides of that, what are the best ways to minimize the downsides of that. In general, I'm optimistic that there are lots of things that can be done.